You're listening to the Blind Tiger Record Club podcast, where we champion music of all genres, and we believe vinyl is king.
Vinyl is king.
Welcome back to the Blind Tiger Record Club on air. It's great to be with you all again, and thank you for joining us tonight on Lightning 100, or if you're listening to the recast on your favorite podcast platform. I'm David Williams, and as always, I'm here with Rudy Newman.
Hey, everybody.
And Kevin Lee.
Hello.
Tonight, we're going to be discussing all four styles represented in the Blind Tiger Record Club October Records of the Month program. The first one we're going to talk about is our singer-songwriter album, and this month, it's the incredible new album from Big Red Machine. How long do you think it's going to last? The second style that we're going to talk about is our rock and alternative record. It's the second appearance in our club by the band Thrice. It's the new album, Horizons East. And our jazz soul blues album this month is Loving in Stereo by the English band Jungle. And the last album we're going to discuss is the classic pick for October. It's one of the biggest albums of all time by arguably the biggest hard rock metal band of all time. It's Metallica's 1991 self-titled release, known on the street as the Black Album.
Never heard of them.
Believe it or not, that album just turned 30 in August.
Amazing.
So we're going to talk about that one to wrap up the show tonight. Big record. If you enjoy listening to the albums and the music that we discuss tonight, and if you appreciate the show, the best way you can support us is by becoming a member or shopping at the B.T.R.C. record store. The albums that we're talking about tonight were all curated for our members. At Blind Tiger Record Club, you join by picking one of these four styles, and once you join, you can switch styles every month if you hear a record that you want in a different style instead of the style you join with. Most are limited edition or special variants. A club membership is honestly the best way to secure these titles each month because so many are hard to find after release. We also have thousands of titles available in the store. You don't have to be a member to shop there. So just go to blindtigerrecordclub.com and you can see our membership details. The styles descriptions with easy-to-read instructions are there and how the club works. You can actually start your membership with one of the albums we're going to be discussing tonight. So think about that as you're listening to the show. Well, let's get to it. Let's drop the needle and take a quick listen to the Blind Tiger Record Club's October Records of the Month. So on August 27th, Big Red Machine released the band's second album, How Long Do You Think It's Gonna Last, on Jaguar Records. If you're unfamiliar with Big Red Machine, it's a collaborative project between Justin Vernon, who is also known as Bon Iver, and Aaron Dessner of The National. The first release was self-titled, and it was released in 2018. You know, we've talked about both Dessner and Vernon a lot over the last year. You know, Dessner, of course, is the producer of the two massively successful Taylor Swift releases that she dropped at the end of last year. Both Folklore and Evermore produced massive radio success and even produced a Grammy for Album of the Year. Vernon was a guest vocalist on both albums. Taylor is also kind of recapturing her back catalog right now and re-recording all the albums so that she kind of controls those masters. And Dessner is the producer on all of those albums as well. The first album, Fearless, just released October 1st. Desner and his brother Bryce, along with Justin Vernon, created a nonprofit international artist gathering called the People Festival. Desner also co-created Boston Calling Music Festival. So, along with kind of like the heavy workload that these artists already have with their main band, the National, they're just extremely collaborative. I mean, and as well as Bon Iver, like the two of these guys together, they constantly pick projects to work on that almost become like communal projects. They seem to like intentionally not only try to collaborate, but they also work very hard to lift up the co-collaborators and build platforms like People Festival that really lifts up the works of these artists and the stuff that they all kind of create together.
It feels like the main purpose behind a lot of what Justin Vernon and Aaron Dessner do now is like creating more, community in their songwriting families, basically. Like
songwriting, recording, all of it. Yeah,
like using a lot of the same people.
You start seeing a lot of
the
names
Taylor
on
Swift
all the albums. Yep.
And then in the Big Red Machine first album and this one, I think that they're just trying to like make that scene grow and grow.
Yeah, and there's also some of the projects are the brands that are literally born out of these artist gatherings. One of them we had in our club last year, which was the Bonnie Light Horsemen.
Yeah.
The same approach that Desner kind of took on the Taylor Swift album, it not only, I think it dramatically affected the end result of her records. It charted her at AAA in formats that would have never normally looked at Taylor Swift. And so I think like their efforts, especially with someone like her, have been extremely successful. And then, what they've been doing with the People Festival, and, as I mentioned, Bonnie Light Horseman and groups like that, but you also have, like, Bonnie Light Horseman is a great example because it's not only, that's also a collaborative thing. That has Eric Johnson from the Fruit Bats. It has Josh Kaufman from His Golden Messenger, also a really big session guitar player and producer, and then Anais Mitchell. And all of these artists are appearing on each other's projects. And since they started tracking this record, a lot of these artists you'll also see in the credits on this album. So the song that we played at the opening was the first single, and it is called Latter Days. It features Anais Mitchell of the Bonnie Light Horsemen. Another song they released in August to set up this album is called Phoenix. It also features Mitchell and the band Fleet Foxes. So the song is currently at AAA right now. It's at number 45 and working its way up. This is Phoenix.
Out in a loading daylight, watching the fog recede, divided the flame you slowly gave to me. Sign of relief in my mind, but I only caught you the one time. Later I'd watch you and wonder what it was like.
Am I wrong, or does it remind anybody else? Does it have a lot of Tom Petty in there? To me, that song sounded. It brought me to the stripped down Tom Petty stuff.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Well, on the first Big Red Machine album, Vernon had a lot of vocal duty, and on this album, most of the vocals are guest collaborators.
Yeah.
And I really think that helps kind of. It pulls you away from the natural like Bon Iver comparisons.
Yeah, because if you listen to these records, kind of like me as more of a Bon Iver fan, like historically you hear. Like, it's just like another Bon Iver record kind of in a
Right.
lot of ways. But if you listen again, you can hear all the other influences, and especially if not hearing his voice on every track.
Well, and I'll even go a step further and say I personally like pulling his vocal back in this way, because I think when Vernon does come in, the presence of his vocal when it comes in is much more impactful and powerful to me when it's added in to accompany the guest vocals, especially when it's which we saw this on the Taylor Swift stuff when it's juxtaposed against like a female vocal, this sounds so good.
And he's usually doing the falsetto,
Yes.
while the female vocal is like underneath in the harmony or whatever. So it's kind of a cool little switch up.
Well, he does have lead vocal on a few tracks, but most of this record is guest vocalist. And so along with Fleet Foxes and Anais Mitchell, we just played on those first two songs. And Anais Mitchell appears on 3 tracks actually on the record.
And Aaron Dessner like sang more on this one than he ever has really. Like, he kind of had to come out of his comfort zone a little bit.
But you also have appearances from Taylor Swift, who appears on 2 tracks as
Never
a
heard
featured
of her.
vocalist. You have Sharon Van Etten, along with Irish musician Lisa Hannigan, who she's appeared on albums with The National and on the Bonnie Light Horseman album. And then Sharon Nova of the band My Brightest Diamond. All of them appear on a song together.
Yep.
There's the rap artist Naeem, who's also known as Spank Rock. There's the Canadian artist La Force. English musician Ben Howard appears with British folk musician Kate Stable, who is known as This Is the Kit. All of those artists appear on these tracks on this record, and again, when Vernon does come in with a lot of and it's also awesome too, because you've got this mixture of like female and male vocal on the different tracks. So sometimes you might have like the first verse, you get a male lead coming in, and it really keeps the album fresh. It changes it up. It's a lot different from the first record. Thomas Bartlett, who's a mega kind of session musician and sideman, he plays drums for most of this record. Brad Cook plays bass. He plays a lot with his Golden Messenger, and he's produced albums like Brent Cobb and Waxahachie. There's Brian Davenport of The National, who wrote and does the drum programming. And then Dresner's brother, Bryce, of course, he's kind of is on almost everything he does.
Yeah.
He's also in The National. He does what you expect. He does guitar work and orchestration. So we're seeing, a lot of the same names, that you kind of associate with all of these projects coming out of the People gatherings. But you're also seeing names that haven't been in there before. So I really think this is one of the most diverse things that they've put out collectively.
Yeah, and they'll probably continue to expand on that with the next one.
Dessner told Uproxx when he was interviewed about this project that this is music I initially generated and feel emotionally connected to, but it has always been very interesting to hear how different people relate to it and how different voices collide with it. And that's what I really think makes this album special. With everyone that's on this record, there's an openness, a creative generosity, and an emotion quality that connects all of it together. The biggest song to release off the album is one that you would expect. It's one of Taylor Swift's cuts. It's a song called Renegade. The song peaked at number 20 on Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart. It was number 14 on Top 40, number 9 on Hot Rock and Alternative. And the song already has accumulated over 25 million streams on Spotify alone. This is Renegade.
I tapped on your window on your darkest night. The shape of you was jagged and weak. There was nowhere for me to stay, but I stayed anyway. And if I would have known how many pieces you had crumbled into, I might have let them lay. Are you really gonna talk about timing in times like these, and let all your damage me, and carry your baggage up my street, and make me your future history? It's time, you've come a long way. Open the blinds, let me see your face. You wouldn't be the first renegade to need somebody. Is it insensitive for me to say, get your shit together so I can love you? Is it really your anxiety that stops you from giving me everything? Or do you just not want to? I tapped on
This is my favorite song on the record. I think having Taylor on it has a lot to do with it, but it has the most structure, I think, to it, which is something that I'm more of a fan of. But it is a great performance by everybody on the record. Her voice is instantly recognizable. It's comfortable. It's comforting, and this is a great record. And this is my favorite song on the record.
Actually, both of her songs are really strong. Rudy,
Yeah, I
the
think
other one's called Birch,
Yeah,
right?
I think Birch
Yeah.
is a little bit like more of my favorite, and I think you kind of agree with that. But like Renegade is the one that has the most like pop,
Well,
radio
it's more
friendly.
in line with what we got on Folklore and Evermore.
Yes.
Very similar. But the reason I think I like Birch so much is because they kind of flip it on that one, and actually, the lead is Vernon. And then she comes in and almost like does background vocals and harmonies with him on the chorus.
Yeah.
And so they just kind of flipped that, what they did on her record, where this song could have been on Taylor Swift album. But that's not a negative. Like, it just shows how, like, it's no wonder that this is the one song that, is commercially the most viable, because she makes it. So the album debuted at number 82 on the Billboard 200. It was number 11 on the independent chart and number 12 on both the rock and alternative charts. Our members will be receiving this in a limited edition double opaque red vinyl. We also have it available in a double standard black vinyl in the store. And we also have Big Red Machine's self-titled debut available in the record store, along with a couple of the other the albums we mentioned tonight, like Bonnie Raitt Horseman, the Desner produced Taylor Swift albums, several National and Bon Iver albums. All of those are available in stores. So go to blindtigerrecordclub.com today and you can check out all those projects in the store. We recently welcomed a brand new sponsor for the show. 85 Supply is the official sponsor for both the podcast and on air. 85 Supply is a full-service, nationwide merch company. They specialize in screen printing, embroidery, logistics, graphic design, and custom branded promotional products. From printed t-shirts to the most custom products available, 85 Supply offers over 500,000 products to customize. 85 Supply is trusted by some of the largest brands in the nation, from organizations like MTV, LaCroix Sparkling Water, Spotify, and more, including the Blind Tiger Record Club. All the club's merch is designed, printed, and manufactured by 85 Supply. They make the process so easy. I give them my ideas, and they work with me to bring the vision to life, and then we get them made. Whether you're a touring rock band, or an artist, an event, an organization, or a podcast and radio show like us, we highly recommend reaching out to our friends at 85 Supply for your next project that needs branded product. Go to 85supply.com or email info@85supply.com to get started. You can also get 5% off your first order. Simply mention Blind Tiger Record Club via email or over the phone with your rep. It's that simple. No coupon codes or anything to remember. Just tell them that Blind Tiger Record Club sent you and you get 5% off your first order. Once again, visit 85supply.com or email info@85supply.com to get your next merch project started. On October 8th, Thrice will be releasing the band's 11th album, Horizons East, on Epitaph Records. This is the band's follow-up to their 2018 release, Palms, which is an excellent album, and it was also the Blind Tiger Record Club's Rock and Alternative Record of the Month when it came out. So this makes Horizon East the second appearance for Thrice in the club. Thrice is what I call thinking man's rock. It's usually categorized as post-hardcore, alternative, pop or indie punk. Sometimes it's even been called emo. Rudy probably has strong feelings about that.
Post-hardcore, emo. pop punk. They
Yeah.
kind of encompass a lot of genres.
I mean, this band's been putting out records since 2000, so the sound has morphed
Oh, yeah.
as you would expect, or I would hope,
Yes.
over a 21-year career. They definitely started out more like, in that punk, like especially pop punk kind of vein.
Palm muted, chunky guitars.
Yeah. But
Fast songs.
as the band released albums, especially like around 2009 and 11, the band had, they had put out an album called Beggars, and the 2011 release was Major Minor.
Yeah.
And that was when the band really shifted to more of like just a mature, seasoned kind of indie rock alternative style.
Yeah.
This newer stuff reminds me a lot of Nothing More, and I think for good reason. Johnny Hawkins, who's the lead singer of Nothing More, he's a principal songwriter. He counts Thrice as a major influence on his work.
Yeah.
Nothing More is a lot harder, but it's complex like Thrice, and I also kind of consider that band thinking man's
Yeah.
rock as well. Like it's just pensive. It does more to me than a regular harder rock band
Yeah.
does. Thrice has the ability to kind of like do heavy in a way that most bands don't do it. This is just another one of those bands that has earnest lyrics. They fill the space with these atmospheric sounds that actually, the net result of all that is it kind of takes some of the punch out of the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is still fairly hard rock. But it doesn't seem to feel that way, the way it normally does when a harder band does it.
I still think they have a really good ability to write the anthemic chorus,
for sure.
The arena
The
filling,
song structure is great.
Yeah.
To set this album up for release, Thrice released a couple of early retail singles. One was the song that we played at the opening called Summer Set Fire to the Rain. The second was a song called Robot Soft Exorcism.
Looking down through armored glass above a field of fire and ash. From this height, it's hard to even tell just what it's like outside the suit, the terror and the torn up roots, the lives you've helped to make a living hell. But there's another way to face the unforeseen. You don't have to stay inside of that machine. Staring up across the wreck, a single figure stands erect. The shouting waves are tiny and absurd. And move back curiosity, crack and lift the canopy. And straining, you can just make out their words. But there's another way to face the unforeseen. You don't have to stay inside of that machine.
So Thrice is a band that I became aware of in the early 2000s. The first record that I knew of was on Island, the
Yes.
first major label.
The artist in the ambulance.
Yeah, and there was actually a lot of people, industry people, that were big fans of this band, but it hadn't really broke.
Yeah.
And to this day, I don't think it's really broken the mainstream.
It's like it's been right there.
They've had
They
their
bubble
yeah,
under.
and their bass, and they do a ton of streams,
And they have
do
a
great
big bass.
business. But it's from all these indie fans, right?
Yes.
It's like they're not a mainstream. You're not going to see them on the Billboard Music Awards or
Yeah.
something like that. But I've always liked
you
them.
should.
Yeah.
Well,
I
if
mean,
they
it's
had
not that
bands,
they couldn't be.
if they had real bands on those anymore,
Sure.
But
Releases like Palmed and this one. Yeah.
this is really reminds me of another band from the late '90s called Failure that I am a big fan of, and I think these guys have some influences. I think you can hear it in there. And then in this song, in Robot, I really like that there was some chord, it built up, and that there was some chord changes that you didn't see coming.
Yeah.
But it worked, and I really like that when it's something that's not obvious. Good lyrics.
Which they do a lot.
Yeah, and not obviously you're like, oh, that's pleasant,
Yes.
minor change in there or something. And to me, that's something that I really like. So I find that in this song and in the first song in Summer, I heard those late '90s influences from indie bands like Failure.
Yeah.
And also I hear a Chevelle in there as well. But I think a lot of those bands like Chevelle probably were influenced by
Arguably
This
could
band,
be.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's the one guy, who actually turned me on to this band was Michael Goldstone, who people know as Goldie. He's signed one of my acts, is how I met him, but he signed Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine, and then Andrew's band. What was the band before Pearl Jam that became Pearl Jam?
Not Mother.
Mother Love Bone.
I was about to say
yeah,
Mother
yeah.
Love Bone.
So
This is
yeah.
Shangri-La.
So Goldie's the one that would talk to me about Thrice, and I was just like, it sounded like an indie band. I sound like something maybe it'd be too indie for me. And then one day we sat down and listened to it together.
It's more like
wow,
a punk metal band at that point, and just has evolved very, significantly.
Yeah, I think the
years.
most important part of this band is this evolution that they've had. And
absolutely.
They self-produced this album. Dustin Kinsrew and Tepe Teranishi kind of ran point on the production, and then you have the brothers Riley and Eddie Breckenridge on bass and drums.
Yeah.
So these 4 band members, they've been together for 21 years. I mean,
Since high school.
There hasn't been a breakup. There hasn't been one member leave. I mean, this is I think that's why the evolution is so pure.
Yeah.
Like they've not just randomly changed their styles or brought in new people that kind of had different things. Like this band has morphed and grown and matured and seasoned over a 21-year period.
And they worked with Brian McTiernan on their first releases, like 3 or 4 releases, then moved to another producer and then started self-producing like kind of after that. And all these efforts, post moving away from producer have been self-produced in-house, and they've done them in their own studios.
Yeah, in their own studios, yep.
Yeah.
And that's all a natural progression of a good band. And I think one of the reasons that this band has kept their base and built their base without being, like I said, a mainstream press heavy, popular press heavy band is because the same original members, and they're making records that are Thrice records.
Yeah.
So many bands, when they'll change some members, or as their career goes, and all careers have peaks and valleys, they'll start chasing something, and all of a sudden this band is making records because they think this is the next thing that's happening, or they're following something that's happening.
Yes.
And this band, to me, feels like they stay true to themselves. They're evolving, but they're still making Thrice records.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it spot on.
Exactly.
Their big thing that they chase when they go into the studio is like, how can we push ourselves?
Yep.
And
how can we expand the sound? But keep
not
it in-house?
not chasing another sound, but pushing Thrice's sound.
Making an even better Thrice record, not making a highly suspect record.
Well, I read an interview with Kinsrew and Teranishi about the new album, and they talked about using jazz-inspired quartal chords in the guitar riffs. So, this is why I call this a thinking man's rock, because lyrically it's very compelling and thought-provoking, but it's also the songs, like the way they're structured, like the movements, the cinematic builds, things like using complex jazz chords to structure the songs. It is just not what you get with a normal, just straight ahead rock and roll band.
Yeah, it feels like they try to be more innovative.
Yes. The radio single off this album is Scavengers. It's a song called Scavengers.
Which is one of the strongest songs, and more kind of set in the old sound of Thrice compared to the rest of the record. This is more of the historical sound of Thrice.
Maybe older sound, not like old, not like punk.
No. But Artist in the Ambulance, Vezu was the record after that.
This is a good one if you like Thrice rock and roll, and there's a lot of good stuff to this.
They released it to retail on July 20th, the same day they actually announced the album. And at the time of this recording, it was sitting at number 25 on Active Rock.
Overhead are those angels or vultures, heavy wings and the hum of decay. The seething harbor, skew and smother the light of day. Every word is a dissonant whisper. They've got you wearing a smile like a mask, and all you're left with is every
In 2007 and 2008, Thrice released a connected series of projects. They were the Alchemy Index Volumes 1 and 2 that came out in 2007, and then the Alchemy Index Volumes 3 and 4 came out in 2008. So Kinsrue told Guitar World that there will be a Horizons West.
Yes, they've already got some of it.
Yeah,
done.
to accompany this record. It's partially written, it's even partially recorded, and it's all from the same writing sessions. There was a point when he told them that they decided to split this into 2 records. They did have 20 songs, and they liked all of them. And this wasn't one of those times where they wanted to like just pick the strongest ones and then kind of maybe shelf the other ones for the time being. They literally liked all of them. They just didn't want to put them all on one project. So, on Palm's album that came out in 2018, they actually had tracked 14 songs, and they put 10 on the album, and then they released in 2019 Palm's Deeper Wells, which was a companion EP.
And it's got one of the best freaking songs on it, In the Storm. It's so good.
The band's done this before, so I'm assuming that probably in the next year they'll put out Horizons West, and it'll probably have 10 new tracks, and it'll be another album that kind of accompanies this work. So it actually ends up, the way that they do it, it's really kind of a cool process because they really are strategically like looking at a group of 20 songs, but in the old idea of shelving some and keeping some, like theirs is more of like, hey, let's do these 10 together on this one. Let's put these 10 together on this other one. But there is synergy between the two. And they even talked about these Horizon records. They talked about it being like a sunrise and a sunset.
Yeah. I
so
thought that was really cool.
Being companion pieces.
Like dawn oriented for this one for East, and then sunset, for the West one.
Our members are going to get this album in a limited edition opaque yellow vinyl. We also have Palms in a 180-gram audio file vinyl. We also have it in a clear and black vinyl, and we also have it in a clear vinyl. We had a lot of Thrice's catalog.
I think we sold through them in the last year pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is one of those bands that it does sell quickly, and then most of the catalog is now unavailable from distributors. So, this is another one of those records that you want to grab it while you can, because probably in a few months it'll be a pretty tough one to find. On August 13th, the British duo Jungle released their third album, Loving in Stereo, on the independent label Keola Records. This is the follow-up album to 2018's Forever, which that produced the dance hit Happy Man, if any of you out there have heard that. This is the band that delivered that song. The song was top 40 on Billboard Hot Dance and Electronic chart, but it also charted on AAA, and it peaked at number 20. This is another one of those bands that does very well in the UK, but has failed to kind of really connect, in the US. For example, this album and the album I just mentioned, Forever, both of them charted on Billboard 200, but at 159 and 84. But in comparison, on the UK's OCC, all 3 of their albums have charted in the top 10 at number 7, number 10, and this new album, Loving in Stereo, peaked at number 3.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's a vast difference between, the awareness in Europe and UK and the US. They have had several Billboard Top 40 singles, mostly in the dance charts, but none really go that far up the chart. Now, streaming is a different story. On Spotify, this group has 4,300,000 monthly listeners.
That's awesome.
They've got about 300 million combined streams, and they've also been synced in video games and on some TV.
Yeah.
This band's really fun, but they use R&B, funk and neo soul to create these really great dance songs. I mean, it's very much, Kevin, would you say like 70s, not disco really, just more like.
But in funk, I guess, funk and dance movement in the early 70s with Rick James and Isley Brothers and Ohio Players, stuff like that. It's just got fun grooves. There's different on Truth. You'll hear some 80s sound effects, like almost like video game sound effects, keyboard styles. Other songs that we're going to get into have some really cool.
And that's the song we played at the opening is Truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when we get into other things like Keep It Moving and stuff, it's just recorded like a 70s band, drums and all that stuff. It's everything's very soft and mic'd versus today, right, where it's sampled and stuff. It's a great fun record and it's easy to dance to.
It's easy to shake it to.
Well, they've been trickling out retail singles over the last couple of years. They actually released 5 tracks before they released the album. One of the first releases to set up this album was a song called Romeo. It features Boz, a rapper on Interscope Records.
Never lose, steady climb, city crime infested. 10 years, so divine, my blessings. I injected hope into my lungs and spoke up things I once thought were silly dreams. I walk you through the scene. Jump on a jet and it's charted a star. Bad in the cycle, I don't even like her, she dead it. I cannot be bothered to call. Hope you see the light, darling. Oh yes. Running like 4 legs, them people fold. They don't want no run-ins like bow legs, no. Jumped out the circus like Soleil, curving. My people got me, copy, solid, sterling. Still resolve. Look at you like a cube of sugar in a pool of water that you will dissolve. Had so much to prove, but no wherewithal, so you got no wherewithal, no way out. Either way, it's all gon' play out. It's all gon' play out. I never seen this type of glow. Look at the seed I plan to grow. I think they need.
This band was started by 2 producers, Josh Lloyd Watson and Tom McFarlane.
A basement band or a bedroom recording band.
So they produced all this music, but when they tour live, they have a full band.
Yeah, like 7 members on stage.
Yeah, like at festivals and stuff like that on that circuit, they're really popular, and evidently their live show. I haven't seen them, but their live show is supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So, on Jungle's first 2 records, there are some, highlights that stand, some standout songs that have done really well. But I think overall, when you listen to the albums, they're, for lack of a better word, is a lot more the same, like with those first 2. This album, however, Loving in Stereo, is much, much stronger. I feel like this album is more organic, and that kind of helps shed some of that.
It feels like they honed in on their sound.
Yeah,
like over the first 2 records, this is like the best complete look for a full album.
Well, it's closer to that 1970s, funk that we were talking about. It's full of falsetto. It has some hip hop fill-in parts. It's also got horns. So for me, this album is just a lot more innovative, and especially the way they use kind of these throwback sounds. And they mix them in with what and I guess what I was saying on the first 2 records, it's almost like it's more produced. Like it does fall more into a category of straight like dance music that's very produced.
Yeah.
And this is more of like taking these throwback elements, mixing them in a very natural way. Even their vocal phrasing and the syncopation that they use reminds me of classic music from the 70s. It doesn't sound like what you think of with like modern dance or something like that. The radio single that they released to promote this album, I think is a really great representation of this whole album. It's accumulated over 21 million streams on Spotify. It peaked at number 29 on the Billboard Dance Chart, making it one of the strongest performers in the U.S. This is Keep Moving.
Keep Moving's my favorite track on the record. I love it's just
Same.
fun, and I love I love anything that sounds like the 70s.
And it's cool, yeah.
and it's just got groove, and it's fun, and it sounds honest, and great vocals, great instrumentation. I can listen to this type of stuff all day long.
Yeah.
I definitely think this album is easily the band's best release to date. It's full of energy. It's extremely upbeat. I think it was a very smart move for them to add in more of these classic elements we were mentioning to their overall sound.
And do collaborations for the first time.
Yeah.
This is the first time
There's
they
a
ever
couple-
featured
That's right.
other...
Matter of fact, there's some really cool, even softer, slow moments with the collaborations at the some of the last tracks. We don't have time to play it on the show, but there's some really, really solid tracks on this record. It's just this album is just worlds from even where they were. So bottom line, I mean, if you like the clips we've played, you're going to enjoy this whole album. And our members are going to be getting this in a limited edition, black, blue, marble. It actually looks like it's black. Matter of fact, when we first got it, we thought they'd sent us the wrong vinyl. But when you hold it up to the light, it turns into this blue marble. It's really
beautiful.
cool. Yeah. On August 12th, 1991, Metallica released the band's fifth album. It was the self-titled album commonly referred to as the Black Album, and it was on Elektra Records. On September 10th of this year, Metallica remastered and re-released the album on their own label, Blackened Records. This is such a pivotal album for Metallica. It's the follow-up to 1988's And Justice for All. That album was the first album that they made after the death of bassist Cliff Burton. So that album is the introduction of Jason Newsted. That album blew up, selling almost 10 million copies and producing the hit single One. That song earned the band their first Grammy. So after supporting that album with a world tour, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich, who usually start the writing process, got back together, regrouped to start on the next album, which is the Black Album. When the Black Album released in 1991, it spent 4 weeks at number one on the Billboard 200. It would go on to sell 16 times platinum in the U.S. and over 35 million albums worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. Looking at this album today in the streaming world, it's pretty ridiculous. Metallica has over 18 million monthly listeners on Spotify, just on Spotify. The singles off the Black Album are the biggest streaming performers, and just the three songs that we're going to talk about on this show, they have almost 2 billion streams just between those three songs.
That's amazing.
Hello.
The song that we played at the opening was The Unforgiven. That was the second single off the Black Album to go to radio. It's a power ballad. It went number 10 on mainstream rock and number 35 on the Hot 100. It also went number 25 in the UK. The third single released off this album is a song called Nothing Else Matters. Hetfield was the principal writer and plays the guitar parts himself, making it one of the very few songs in the entire Metallica catalog that doesn't have guitarist Kirk Hammett on it. As a matter of fact, Hammett had to learn to play it before they went on tour because obviously he plays it live. It's another ballad. It went to number 11 on Mainstream Rock, number 34 on the Billboard 100, and number 6 on the UK's OCC.
So close, no matter how far. Couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trusting who we are, and nothing else matters. Never opened myself this way. Life is ours, we live it our way. Hold these words I don't just say, and nothing else matters. Trust I seek and I find in you. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view, and nothing else matters. Never cared for what they do. Never cared for what they know. But I know.
So Hetfield and Ulrich really kind of were wearing the producer's hats at the beginning of this project, just as far as like prepping and doing pre-production and kind of setting up these songs. But the band really liked the production of Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood album, which was released in 1989. The producer of that album was Bob Rock. Rock had also, before this, he had produced the Colts' Sonic Temple, Kingdom Come's self-titled debut. He had just finished working with David Lee Roth on A Little Ain't Enough.
I'm running.
You know, the conflicts with Rock have become notorious over the years, but it was really the bringing him in and having him help move them from thrash metal, which to a much more commercial, mainstream, digestible metal sound that really helped make this band the biggest metal band in history.
You can't overstate the impact of not only of this record on society, musical society, radio format, everything, but how often do you see a band that is several records into their career drop their biggest record?
On the fifth record.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. It used to happen when you would build an audience in the 70s and stuff like that, but in this time, in the early 90s, very rare.
It was usually the first or second record, right?
Well, especially coming off of
First or
Injustice for
second.
All. I mean, that record was very successful. So, I mean, the bar was already set pretty high for a metal band.
They were already performing well, right?
You know,
I
that
mean,
the level of Injustice for All
Yeah.
and coming off a Grammy,
Yeah.
like who would have thought?
And that was when they're out there headlining for the first time, selling out arenas, but still basically zero radio, zero mass appeal.
Yeah.
This record comes along and changed. It just had such a huge impact on radio, and Metallica became a household name. You couldn't get away from hearing this record wherever you went, and on any dial, you just
it was like
and it was just
massively-
there. It was massive, and if you weren't around at the time, it's hard to overstate it.
So we mentioned the second and the third single released off this album, but it was the first single that really took this band to a whole new level. Enter Sandman, I think it's safe to say, is not a ballad.
It's not about, and
The
it's
first one we're playing tonight. So,
yeah, that song had a lot of people that were hardcore fans feeling the band sold out because it was such a hit, that it was structured like a normal radio friendly song. That
Like verse,
all
chorus,
the songs
verse,
on this record are different structure wise than the previous albums, where they would be super long or guitar solos would be really long or whatever.
Yeah.
This album was written, recorded, produced with radio in mind. If they did it on purpose or not, I don't think you hire Bob Rock and say you didn't do that on purpose, right? But it is a completely different move for them. They took a lot of flack for it, and they became the biggest band on the planet because of it.
Yep.
And to this day, I don't know that band, with everything they went through, I don't know that band would even still be together without the success of this record and what it allowed them to do. As soon as they put this record out, they called their own shots.
Yeah.
They're the biggest band,
That was
the
the end
biggest
of
metal
that.
band in the world.
Yeah.
Biggest metal band probably in history as far as sales and just
Sales
the
and
merch,
size and,
the
yeah,
merch,
following.
you know, and stuff. It's just, like I said, it's hard to, if you weren't around when it happened, it's hard to explain to somebody how only a few people, your friends, would know it that were maybe musicians or that were into the heavier stuff. And then all of a sudden you're walking down the mall and there's kids with Metallica
Yeah.
shirts.
Or they're talking about them on the news
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
parents are trying to like get it censored or taken off the shelves.
Well, Enter Sandman went number 10 on mainstream rock. It was number 16 on the Hot 100. And it was number 5 in the UK.
I think that's the first song I ever heard by Metallica.
Well, it also went pretty much top 10 in almost every radio market around the world. It was nominated for Best Rock Song at the 34th Grammy Awards. And it has over 1 billion streams across platforms, almost 800 million on Spotify alone. So, this is Enter Sandman.
Say your prayers and so on. Don't forget, my son, to include everyone. I tuck you in, all within, keep you free from sin, till the Sandman he comes. Sleep with one eye open, gripping your pillow tight. Exit light, and tonight. Take my hand, off to never, never land.
So in 1992, the album itself won a Grammy for Best Metal Performance.
finally took Jethro Tull down.
In 1999, 8 years after the album's release, Metallica won the Billboard Music Award for Catalog Album of the Year. At radio, Enter Sandman is still one of the top played songs at mainstream rock to this day. In December 2019, the Black Album became the 4th release in American history to enter the 550-week milestone on the Billboard 200. It also became the 2nd longest charting traditional title in history, the 2nd to spend 550 weeks on the album charts. In 2020, the album is still ranked number 235 on the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Times list.
That's too low.
Well, they've updated the list, but and I actually think
they
it was
just
lower.
did.
I think it was lower before that, believe it or
What?
not. Yeah, but this is an absolute must-own album for any vinyl collector. Unless you just don't like rock, this isn't one you need to have in your collection.
Yeah.
Our members are going to be getting this in a double LP remaster celebrating its 30th anniversary. We have a lot of Metallica in the store. Many are limited edition color variants. We also have a collector series called Metallica Black and Recordings Collector Series. It's the complete studio recordings. And so you can check that out at the web store as well. It's a great way to not have to try to track down all the vinyl individually.
We on this show, we go through a lot of singer-songwriter and more independent style of artists and their releases. But at Blind Tiger Record Club, we have everything, including tons of metal and a lot of hard-to-find stuff. And so if you're a fan of the heavier side of music as well as some of the other artists that we go through, I just want to encourage you to come and check out the store. Everything is there. A lot of special releases there, a lot of stuff that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else or it's going to be way overpriced. We have it in stock, and it can be delivered right to your door. And this is one of those records that if you are a fan of music, you should own.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Blind Tiger Record Club on air and our discussion of the Blind Tiger Record Club's October Records of the Month. We really hope you heard something tonight that makes you want to hear more music. If you want to find out more about any of the albums we discussed today, go to blindtigerrecordclub.com. On the homepage, you can read more about all the records we talked about on this show. You can also learn how to become a member. It's really the best way to grab up albums like this that will likely be unavailable not long after release. With a club membership, you secure your copy every month. So start your membership today with one of the albums we discussed on this show. I mentioned our collector series when we were talking about Metallica. Most of the collector series are product bundles that we curate and build at Blind Tiger Record Club, and they can be a great way to get an entire collection of your favorite artists. They're cheaper in a series and many times have very hard to find albums that if you had to search for and track them down on your own might be tough to do and actually complete an entire collection. We just added a great box set for Sade titled This Far. It has all 6 of the band's albums, so it's the complete studio recordings, and they're all in 180-gram audiophile vinyl. We also just added Booker T and the MGs, the complete stack singles, volume 1 and 2. This is an amazing set. Both volumes are double red vinyl sets. It's very limited. Matter of fact, they're already back ordered with our distributors. You can find many, many more great releases, all available in limited edition in color or audiophile variants at the store. Go to blindtigerrecordclub.com today and make sure you don't miss out on this great new music. You can also check out our Americana sale this month in honor of Americana Fest and the Americana Music Honors and Awards. Current and past nominees' music will all be marked down significantly until the end of the month. Just click on the sell advertisements or the store drop down, and you can search all the Americana titles that we have marked down. We want to thank our sponsor again, 85 Supply. Remember, they can help you with everything from printed t-shirts to custom products. You can get all your merchandise service needs met with one company from design to print. Listeners of this show, both on air and the podcast, get 5% off your first order. Simply mention Blind Tiger Record Club via email or over the phone with your rep. The whole process is so simple. Go to 85supply.com or email info@85supply.com for more information. Don't forget to check out our podcast-only episodes. We actually have an interview coming up in the next couple of weeks with an artist that we introduced on the last show, Andrea Von Campen, so be sure to look for that. That will air in October. Our next on-air on Lightning 100 is October 18th, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, right after the 615. We'll be discussing the October Spotlight album and several new store editions. Please follow the podcast, subscribe, like us, leave reviews and comments, tell your friends about the show. Nothing helps us more than taking the time to let people know about the show. You can stay up to date on all that we're doing by signing up for our email list at the website. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, but most importantly, please keep coming back. Lastly, thank you to Lightning 100 for always supporting local art and events and even shows like ours. Until next time, keep the wax spinning.